This gardening season has been our most challenging to date, and we know we're not alone. We've seen the heat waves going on in the south and flooding up here in the northeast.
So in this video, we're going to talk about some of those challenges that we faced, as well as all of the things that we've done to remedy them.
If you want to see the rest of our garden, basically everything that we grow that isn't peppers, check out our other channel, Geeky Greenhouse, where we go a little more in depth on growing other crops and some of our general gardening practices. Check it out in the link in the description. So the first thing we dealt with early on in the season was a late start due to extended cold weather into the spring. Some of our peppers didn't get outdoors until mid-June or so, which is very late for us.
Yeah, no matter what, the overnight temperatures just would not stabilize. We had multiple days where it was below freezing when it shouldn't have been. So there were a few things that we did to help deal with those cold temperatures so that our plants would not die outside.
Yep, so taking our potted plants indoors overnight, it was a pain. We were doing it every other day, it seemed like, for weeks on end, just out and in and out and in, but we kept those plants alive and now they're thriving.
And thankfully, we had just finished building our metal hoop frame, which allowed us to keep those plants a little bit warmer on those chilly nights. So we were able to cover the plants that we already put in the ground.
Yeah, I think that's going to be key moving forward, just having that covering. We can cover it with a variety of different things to protect from cold, from insects, which we're about to get to. So it's really nice to have that.
Yeah, and I don't think this crazy weather is going anywhere anytime soon, so we're definitely taking measures to prepare for that. So next we want to get into pests, and of course pests are an issue every single year, but for some reason this year the aphids seemed like they were way worse than they've ever been.
Yeah, aphids are always an issue, but usually it's not bad enough for us to intervene and get involved in any way. But this year we did take a couple of measures. And then once the aphid issue was resolved, for the most part, beetles started coming in and ravaging our pepper plants. It's been the worst year we've seen yet with beetles, and our entire town seems to be affected this way. So it's pretty incredible how bad it's been.
Right now we're dealing with the Asiatic beetles, and the Japanese beetles are going to come soon, and it's not just our peppers. They are destroying our flowers, our fruit trees, absolutely everything it seems like they're taking a liking to.
And I've already started to see some stink bugs, which are next, and we've seen slugs. We've seen pretty much every bad pest that you can get here in New England.
So what have we done about these pests? Well, the aphids, we didn't really intervene too much. We kind of waited it out. With the exception of hosing the plants down, we waited for those beneficials to come in and help take care of the problem.
Yeah, this year it was a little harder to hold off because there were some plants that were pretty heavily under attack by those aphids. But sure enough, ladybug larvae started to show up. We've seen green lacewings out there. We've seen hoverflies and hoverfly larvae. So thankfully, aphids are one of those pests that do end up getting dealt with naturally.
So definitely the most irritating pest that we've had this year is the beetles. And we did a little bit of research on how to control beetles in the garden. We knew that manual removal was definitely the best way, but it's very time consuming. So we crafted something else to kind of help deal with the problem.
Yeah, you actually shared the design idea with me and I just kind of threw it together. Basically what it is a bucket filled with soapy water with a light hanging above it, because most of these beetles that we're talking about are nocturnal, the Asiatic beetle and the European Schaefer beetle, and we have this solar light that comes on at night. It's dangling above the soapy water, and the beetles are attracted to the light and fall down. And it's done a pretty incredible job of collecting a ton of beetles, and it seems to have reduced the pressure somewhat in the garden.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool that we just had that stuff hanging around the house as well.
Next up are storms. We've had so many strong thunderstorms rip through our town this year. It's been pretty incredible and even scary sometimes. We had a very nearby lightning strike, basically right next to our house.
Yeah, that tree has since been taken down, and it was probably the loudest noise I've ever heard in my life.
But with those storms, of course, comes strong winds, heavy precipitation, so our plants were taking a lot of the brunt of these storms. And unfortunately, our biggest pepper plant, our Dorset Naga, actually fell over in the strong winds.
Thankfully, the stem didn't break, but that was certainly devastating to go out and see, but we were able to lift it up and provide it with some additional support. Some of the other things we did to help protect against these strong storms was bring the plants closer to the house where they would be less likely to get damaged by the wind. And we also used buckets on top of some of these smaller plants to help protect them against potential hailstorms.
And again, that hoop covering on our raised beds came in handy there. covering them once again to protect from that strong precipitation. Now, hands down, the worst thing that we've had to deal with this year in the garden is flooding.
There has been a lot more rain in the forecast, a lot more than usual, and we have never seen flooding like this in our experience.
I think we've had something like 9 or 10 inches of rain over the last month, which is a lot for this time of year. Usually there's not flooding in the summer, but there have just been so many storms.
So with all of that flooding, even when the water drains away, the ground is left very muddy, the plants are slumped over, the fruits are rotting, and some of the plants are just completely dead.
Like some of you might know, we rent a garden plot nearby, and we don't own the land, but it turns out it's in a region that floods pretty regularly. So we did know going into it that it was a possible threat, but unfortunately we were affected.
Luckily, we didn't plant the peppers in the corner of the garden that got the worst flooding, but that quadrant was definitely affected.
It's pretty devastating going out there and seeing your plants all slumped over, not growing as well as they should be, and we even saw some plants with entirely rotted fruits with mold growing on them, so just a devastating day to come out there.
And with all of the rain, the weeds have also been out of control because those root systems have gotten stronger, so that's a whole other thing that we have been having to battle. And we certainly know we're not alone in this. A lot of people have been experiencing flooding this year, and we're grateful that we don't grow food for profit.
Yeah, the farmers in our region have been really negatively affected by this. We've seen complete farms underwater. It's just really sad to see. And we're grateful that we grow about half of our food at home and that all of our plants haven't been affected by the flooding. Thankfully, we have really good drainage here at home. We don't have heavy clay soil. But one other positive that's come of this is that our potted plants are thriving. Usually in the midsummer, we're watering our potted plants every single day, but with all of the rain, we haven't really been watering maybe just a handful of times, and the plants are thriving.
So we are looking at alternatives and new places that we can rent garden plots for the future, maybe somewhere a little bit more elevated to help prevent this problem in the future, but we are grateful it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
So we didn't want this to be like a pity fest here. Obviously, everyone has to deal with gardening troubles, and it's more about learning what you can do to remedy your problems and learn from them going forward and become more resilient as a gardener. So hopefully this helps you, and feel free to share your experiences down in the comments below. We're very curious to read them.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.